Welcome to Geek Warning, the podcast that puts the world's most interesting cycling tech into one place. I'm Dave Rome, and I'm yet again your host for this week. Joining me, Brad Copeland, Mechanic to the Stars. Brad, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderfully, Dave. Thank you.
Oh, that sounds very nice. And Ronan McLaughlin. I'm now scared to say your name.
That was your worst attempt yet, but anyway.
Okay. I'm just going to start purposely butchering it.
Moving swiftly on.
Can you give it to me correctly for the 100th time?
Ronan McLaughlin.
McLaughlin.
Yes. He got, yes. 2 for 2.
All right. I'll just have to listen back to this episode before recording every episode from here on out. So.
Don't look at it. Just say it.
All right. Ronan, you've got yet another flight to catch very soon, so we're not going to keep you for too long. You're going to tell us about a few things first before jumping off. But yeah, I guess we're still deep in catching up on all the latest tech from Eurobike. It just wrapped up a few days ago, so there's still plenty to talk about, plenty that we didn't talk about last week. We've also got some things on our mind that truthfully have got me a little bit angry, and it's not a new thing, so I guess, yeah, it's about time I get angry about it. Before we kick off, though, I think it's worth reminding people that we do currently have a special on for the Tour de France. So for this month only, you can get a $1 membership for the month. So head to escapecollective.com/TDF and take us up on that special offer. So Parcours have just released a new gravel aero wheel set, and they're making some pretty big claims around it. It's called the FKT, which stands for Fastest Known Time. And Ronan, what can you tell us about this wheel set?
Yeah, it's a wheel set that I've seen at Eurobike, even though Parcours weren't officially there. A wheel set that we first spotted at Unbound under friend of the collective, Joe Laverick. He had raced there with it. And essentially it's, well, Parcours claiming it's the first aero-optimized gravel wheel set.
That's a bold claim because there's a lot of other brands claiming that they were the first gravel aero-optimized wheel set.
They should follow our podcast.
I think we might need to rephrase that for Parcours, and that I probably would give them, it's the first to market, let's say, of an aero-optimized gravel system. In terms of wheel and tire. I'm just racking my brains right now. Have we had that previously? I don't think we have.
Okay.
Not that I recall. And that's basically what Parcours have focused on here. They developed this new rim with a shed load of CFD analysis and real world testing, where in the real world they actually added like anemometers to the front and rear of the bike, as they've done previously with their road wheels. And contrary to what they found with the road setups, where there's actually quite a difference in the effective yaw angles front to rear, they found on gravel it's practically the same, and so they've gone with a symmetrical design. So the front and rear rims are the same, and basically what the end result is I think they're describing it as a hybrid camtail or a hybrid truncated shape, where actually what they found was that the light bulb effect on the tire, because a gravel tire is so wide, doesn't actually have all that much effect on a gravel setup, because you just have no chance of getting reattachment where the tire meets the rim. And so they focused all their efforts on making a wider rim, deeper in the profile, if that makes sense. And then obviously that has kind of knock-on effects to, if it's an arrow shape in the leading edge, by the time the flow gets to the back of the wheel, that arrow shape becomes more blunt, and so they've had to balance all those sorts of considerations.
Right. So give me some dimensions of this. How wide are we talking for the wheel? What's internal width? How deep?
So we're looking at 47 mil deep rim with a maximum rim width of 40 millimeters. It's ETRTO. It's pretty. I mean, I've seen it, and you really need to be told that it's 47 mil deep, because it's so wide. It's sort of, it doesn't appear as deep as it actually is. It like, if you had told me when I had it in hand it's 30 mil deep, that would have felt more accurate. But I mean, obviously they can measure how deep a wheel is. We're not doubting that. But yeah, it's wide. It's really wide.
And internally, what are they settled on? Shimming more than 25.
Well, yeah, internally we've got a hookless rim, which I mean, pretty par for the courses these days in gravel, with a 27 mil internal width.
Okay. So wider than, I guess, current common.
Wider than current, but not as wide as we've heard of. Can I say that?
There are rumors of things going wider.
Things are going very wider.
Almost nothing's getting narrower.
That's true.
Chains?
Yeah. Especially when, you're trying to hit a 40 mil external width. That's huge.
That's part of the challenge there. It's like, how do you get that wide on the external without either going very, very wide on the interior or going for like this very, very thick sidewall. So that's the challenge there. I mean, it would be easy in theory to create a wide wheel, but there are knock-on effects.
Gotcha. Ronan, given they're claiming to have created the first full aero race tire and wheel system, who have they partnered with for this, and what is the fastest tire width they're suggesting?
So that's why I'm saying it's kind of like a system rather than the first optimized wheel, because it is optimized for a 40 millimeter Panaracer Gravel King X1. It's suitable. It's not that you have to use that tire. It's suitable for tires from 35 to 45 mil wide. But basically, what Parkour had done as part of their CFD analysis, they 3D printed a whole load of different potential rim profiles, added this tire to those 3D prints. They left the spokes out because cycling CFD at the moment doesn't quite have the resolution to include spokes in that analysis. But crucially, they weren't like looking for how fast is it with the CFD analysis, just looking for which is the fastest. So they added in that tire, and then that's what they done their CFD on. The result is they're claiming with this new FKT wheel benchmarked against a Zip 303 Firecrest and Parkour's existing gravel race wheel set, the Rondo. The new wheel set gives a 16 watt advantage at 30 mile per hour with that 40 millimeter tire. Given that 30
how many watts are you losing once you get a puncture with the Panaracer tire?
This is a new Panaracer tire, so I can't answer that.
All right, I'll hold my cynicism for that. Yeah.
I know that Joe decided not to use the Panaracer tire at Unbound and got 6 punctures that day, I think. So,
okay.
Yeah, all bets are off at Unbound, I guess. But
zero mention of Hunt's Limitless gravel aero wheel from this brand. Okay, all right, just checking.
Yeah. What they did say, because I asked like 30 miles per hour, is that like a relevant speed in gravel? The answer was that they had done some testing to like ensure that there was nothing funky going on at lower speeds, and that they were happy to scale those results. More interestingly, though, was that the 35 mil tire that they tested actually tested slower than the 40. And then, as you might expect, the 45 was a little bit slower also, but it was something like 3 to 5 watts slower than the 40. So,
gotcha. All right, yeah. Interesting. Are you getting a pair to test, or is this just?
It's on the cards. I mean, just with Eurobike, Tour de France, everything going on at the moment. Frustratingly, there's a heck of a lot of product launches around the Tour de France this year.
Yes.
Note to brands, maybe try not to do that in future. Not for my sake, just because there's so much noise at the moment. Stuff just doesn't get noticed. Yeah. I don't think. I mean, it makes no difference to me, but I'm presuming it makes a big difference to the brands releasing this stuff. To the point that there's actually like 2 bikes that have arrived while I was away at the tour, that are still in boxes that cannot get to those before I head away again tomorrow. So
there is a nothing short of a crazy amount of new product coming out at the moment. So
I guess it makes sense lining up the tour, but I just wonder, would there be much more benefit to these brands in holding off, given that we see pros using this stuff year round anyway? Why save it to when there's so much else going on in the cycling world in July? Anyway, I'm getting us off track there.
Sorry, Ronan. I know it's getting late there, so let's jump to the other thing that you
just on the FKT before we go. I should say they're not available at the moment. You can pre-order them. Okay, and they're like £1,200, $1,600 sort of price range. So.
Cool. Any idea on weight? Sub 1,500 grams? More than 1,500?
They're claiming around 1,500 grams. Okay. Not around. They're claiming bang on 1,500 grams.
Oh, right.
A round figure, if that makes sense.
Wow. The other thing that we wanted to discuss with you were you have got Canyon shoes, which
I have Canyon shoes.
Yeah. Sounds
Which I want
comfortable.
to start by saying, or like, I know we shouldn't really comment on aesthetics, but these are a beautiful pair of shoes. Visually,
Oh, okay.
I'm speaking.
So
They're-
I'm assuming they're a road shoe.
Road and off road.
Road and
Two
off road.
versions.
Okay.
Yes.
And they're out. When did they come out?
The embargo is about 12 hours from when we're speaking now.
That's why I've never
officially
haven't seen them.
launched on the 11th of July. They're called the Temper, so like TEMPR CFR footwear line for road racing and off road.
Okay. All right.
Versions.
And you've been testing the road shoe.
I've been testing the road shoe.
How's it
for
been?
about a month now. I want to say first of all that Canyon have got some leading experts on site to develop their new shoes. People who have previously developed shoes that we all kind of like Specialized, Giro, Rafa's, others. So they haven't just got somebody in house to go and make them a pair of shoes. They've actually gone to the experts, so to speak. And the other thing noticeable about these is that I'm looking at them now from across the room here. You can't actually see Canyon anywhere on them. The branding is incredibly subtle, which I think is intentional. Kind of makes me wonder if they're started looking at Specialized and Trek doing pretty well with their shoes. Probably more so Specialized and thinking, we want a piece of that pie, which would make
high
sense.
margin. It's a high margin category. If you can do it right.
But again, that kind of gets me back to the people they've got on to do this. It's not just a tick box or they've gone all in developing these new shoes. I've been testing for a month. I'm not quite ready to write a review yet because I personally am having problems, which could well be me problems rather than shoe problems, which is kind of what the delay for me is in trying to establish that. But just to give a bit of background,
You haven't worked out how to use a boa dial, or is it
just shoes is an entirely alien phenomenon to me. I'm not accustomed to covering my feet and things. No, my left foot is a full size smaller than my right foot.
okay.
My metatarsals are also offset by a similar amount, so that makes shoe sizing. I obviously have to go for shoes that fit the bigger foot, because if I don't, then the foot just doesn't fit in. But quite often, I either get lucky or unlucky in whether or not I can get the cleat for my smaller foot rearward enough that I'm not getting hot spots.
Gotcha.
And that's what I've been struggling with the new Canyon shoes. I will say that the heel retention in that is superb. They've gone with what they're calling BOA's Perform Fit Wrap system, and integrated sort of similar to what Trek have done in pressure relief zones, but not quite as open as Trek have done with that new sock-like shoe that they released earlier this year.
Around the ball of the foot where it widens, you sort of have this soft area that lets the shoe stretch. Yeah, okay.
Exactly, and that's very similar to what Canyon have done. But much like those Treks, what I'm getting for me is that actually, because it's like a wraparound system, there's no fidelity in terms of the retention system. It's either on and you give it one more click and it's far too tight, or it's off. Again, that could be a me thing, but that's so basically what I'm waiting on is an extra pair of shoes in a size smaller to determine if just some of the discomfort I'm getting is personal, which I believe it is. I obviously can't say that at the moment. But what that does tell me about the new Canyon shoes is where with other shoes like the Giro, which I tend to turn to, there's a fit window which seems to be much wider than the fit window with the new Canyon shoes. I think if these fit you well as they do for my right foot, they're going to fit you very well. But if you're outside that window, which seemingly to me at the moment is pretty narrow, then I've run into problems.
I'm sure there's a joke in there somewhere about there being a canyon in between the right fit and the wrong fit, but I won't make that joke because that's awful. But yeah, I guess, Ronan, being a consumer direct company, is there price incentive to consider these shoes? Are they sticking to the brand there?
They're available. Well, they're available in various different colors, and they're currently priced at €330.
That's not super cheap.
It's not super cheap, no, definitely not.
Okay. So then the next question to finish things off is: do consumer direct shoes make sense?
That's kind of where I'm also having some outstanding questions. Is how likely are you to add in a pair of shoes when you're buying your Air Road or Ultimate or whatever it is. I'm not sure. Does it indicate maybe some future plans for Canyon? I'm not sure. They do have like drop-in stores and that where you can try things on and that. They're obviously not all over the world or anything like that, but they do exist. So whether there's going to be like, come in and try them on options there, or perhaps softer goods like this they're going to have on sale in places like that, I don't know. But I mean, Canyon do have other soft goods as well. It'd be interesting to know how many Canyon customers go back to the website to stock up on those things. And at least in my head, it might make sense that if you've gone to buying a bike online, then these smaller goods are probably less of a jump.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, most brands do sell shoes online, and a lot of bike shops have stopped stocking the shoe ranges they used to because too many people bought them online. So I mean, it's certainly the precedence there.
I think perhaps ourselves or perhaps the audience here maybe are not brand loyal in that way, but I can understand like if you do ride a Canyon bike, there might be appeal in having Canyon shoes and stuff like that.
But as you say, the branding is incredibly subtle on these. So, which is what we've also seen from Specialized and Giant and a few other shoe companies, that they've effectively removed the branding from them in order to not create that friction for people in other brands of bikes. So
I do think it was also part of the consideration in the design, because one of the things that Canyon were keen to stress to me was that they've actually what the feedback that they're getting. Basically, the feedback I'm getting is not the feedback that they're getting, because what they sort of intentionally designed and what they're telling me they achieved is a shoe that fits and works for Canyon employees in the office who have like a wide array of different feet types, from like super wide to super narrow. And they're getting feedback from those people that these shoes work.
Okay.
So and I think that's kind of what you need if you want to go down that route of online. Is that it just needs to be something that people can have confidence in it fitting them well. So
an accepting fit. All right. Well, sounds interesting. Doesn't sound like we'll have a write-up on that just yet, but probably in the near future once you've got some real time on them and figured out whether it's just you or not.
Well, if it's just my left foot or not.
Or just your left foot. So we might just get a right shoe only review.
Why don't you just buy 2 pairs of shoes, one in each size, and then, write off one of each and then wear 2 different sizes?
Shall I remind you of the pricing?
No, I mean, I just, I thought they were sending this stuff to you for free, dude. Come on, man.
Oh, they're sending me another pair because I'm having a problem with them. But
now feels like a perfect opportunity to put a shout out to the audience. I mean, there's surely someone out there with a shorter right foot that you can swap shoes with.
There should be an app
for this. Buy a pair of shoe.
Yeah,
that is the soul mate I've always been looking for.
What size do you need?
I need someone who needs a 44 right and a 45 left EU size.
Okay, all right. Reach out to Ronan if this is what you've always wanted in life.
Before I go, I maybe want to touch briefly on Eurobike and what it was like last week.
Sure. Yeah, how were the vibes?
The vibes were pretty good. It was. It was everybody was sort of complaining about the clash with the Tour. At least everybody in the drop bar space. To explain that, Eurobike didn't really have a choice because Germany are hosting the European Football Championships and Frankfurt's a host city, so it just wasn't possible in the usual mid-June date. But actually, the show was one of those where you're walking around every day and everybody's asking, what have you seen? Is there anything interesting? And there was that TRP classified group set, there was Continental Tire. We discussed both of those last week. But usually you're lost for what to tell people when you bump into them in the show, and then you get home that night and you download the camera and there's like countless things that you go, oh yeah, that was interesting. And I thought I was having the same experience this year where I was walking around the show and not feeling like I'd seen a great deal. But then I was getting home at night and downloading the camera and there also wasn't a great deal there. But what I think was very useful was just, and what you can't really quantify is how many other features and articles and insights you pick up from just being there speaking to people. That God knows how many articles will come out of that in the months to come. And that was the first time I'd experienced that. The first time I went to Eurobike 4 years ago was the last time Friedrichshafen. Nobody knew me. Second year, nobody really knew me. Last year, it was like, escape what? You're breaking out of jail, what? And this year was kind of the first year that I had contacts that you could speak to, and actually have like meetings and interviews and stuff like that. So as such, I wasted a good deal of my time doing those sorts of things. Not wasted. It was very, very valuable, but it meant that just the 25, 30,000 step days I've seen in the past were more like 15, 20,000 step days this year.
Gotcha. Yeah, and probably more worthwhile than covering a single-sided linkage suspension fork.
If you say so.
So, I mean I think people will see what you.
The good news
maybe they won't
is
find out what you connected with, but it does sound like it was worth your time to do that stuff.
The good news was that the stuff that I did see wasn't under embargo, because I think I spent about half a day last year listening to spiels about new products and then being told this is under embargo until 2045.
I think it's worth reiterating with like a show like Eurobike. It's become so crazy, and it is typically used more as a networking and a catch-up tool these days, and it is also intended as like a dealer event for the German market and broader European market. So a chance for those dealers to see what's new, talk with their brand representatives, perhaps place orders. But I think, as far as big product releases, I think what we're really seeing is those products and those brands now have enough reach outside of these trade shows that they just do their own thing, and they do it away from the busyness of the trade show. So, we've seen the big stuff already, or it's still to come, but Eurobike is no longer the place to launch. It's no longer the place for Shimano to launch a new group set. It's no longer the place for Specialized to launch a new bike, because they haven't attended in many, many years. So
you say that, but I mean, surprisingly, we did have those two launches I mentioned earlier last week, and we also had a new Giant Revolt unveiled, which genuinely surprised me that Giant would unveil a new bike like the Revolt.
And they weren't present at Eurobike? They haven't been in recent years? Giant
had huge stands in combination with KDX and Liv. But they used the first morning of the show to unveil a new Revolt, which I thought was just caught me by surprise.
Yeah, okay. Oh, there's an exception to what I just said. Corrections corner in the same episode. What are the chances?
And in terms of new things that I've seen, I'll just give you two quick highlights. One was, very small sort of niche thing, but Novaride, the French manufacturer who produce oversized pulley wheel systems, have, I'm not going to say affordable, but more accessible oversized pulley wheel systems. I think they're priced at like €350, which is considerably less than the alternatives, or some of the alternatives.
It's still a lot of money for a watt.
Yeah, but what interests me most was that they're promising they're maintenance free. And I challenged them to 6 months of Irish winter to test that theory out. We're going to see how that goes.
It's a bold claim for anything that moves.
Yes. And then the other one, which I'm sure you're going to cover, Dave, was just the new Topeak mini pump, the inflator device thing. Maybe you haven't seen this, have you?
No.
It's the suck and blow, Dave. It's the two-way inflator. It inflates on the pull and the push.
No, this
is a different one. Oh,
yeah, this is like a. I mean, I'm sorry to say this, but like a Fumpa style. Dave, what's the word I'm looking for?
Electric inflator.
Yes, electric. That's
I like Fumpa
big
style
word for me.
Yeah,
the Fumpa is the original in the category, but there's an increasing number of copies coming out of China, and there's a couple of large electronic manufacturers now in the space making for many others. Including Xiaomi.
So having never had one of these, what I'm not certain on is whether or not the other alternatives include like a hose.
So some of the latest ones do. Cycle Plus, their latest ones do. Yeah. I covered them in Threaded recently, and they come with an optional hose extension, and they now have built-in gauges in small pumps as well.
Which makes sense, but I just hadn't considered was that these things get so hot when you're using that without the hose, they can melt the TPU valves.
They can.
Common most, which actually, on a side note, I actually spotted, they weren't talking about them, they weren't showing them, they weren't whatever, but I spotted Goodyear TPU tubes with alloy valves.
Oh, alloy valves. Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. They definitely
like,
weren't TPU. Yeah. I don't know. Actually, I don't know what material they were because you weren't talking about them. Definitely were not TPU.
I feel like if you're a cycling brand with tires and you don't have TPU tubes yet, do you even exist? And that's not me saying everyone should have TPU tubes. I'm just saying every brand seemingly has jumped on the TPU bandwagon. So
well, seemingly Goodyear do exist now because they have TPU tubes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. It's a good year then. I will stop. I need to stop making those comments. I'm so sorry, everyone. All right. Ronan, good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Enjoy the tour.
Guys.
Catch
Thanks.
ya. Speaking of Eurobike things, another thing that came out, which has had quite a bit of buzz around it, Schwalbe click valves. Have you seen these things?
I have seen these things. Seems pretty cool. I'm not sure I
needed a really good job of this.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. I mean, as far as like an alternative valve design, this thing makes a lot of sense. So it's basically they've come up with a valve that the pump head, it's a special pump head, but it clicks straight onto the valve, and then basically, with the push of a button, it pops off. Releases. And it's as simple as that. You don't have to open up any little press to valve thing. You don't have to have any sort of more convoluted pump head that wears away with a rubber seal that opens and retracts. It seems really good. And then I guess the key thing here is that you can adapt existing valve designs to work with this. So they have valve cores that replace existing Presto-valve cores. They have cores that replace they have an adapter that sits over a car valve, a Schrader valve, and likewise for the non-existent Dunlop valves.
Do they actually make a Dunlop adapter?
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Wow. I didn't know if that was a joke or not. That was hilarious. Okay, good.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, so they're going to have inner tubes with this as a native thing. You can assume they're probably going to have tubeless valves at some point as well. But yeah, I mean, as far as like adapting existing valve stems to work with the system, it seems pretty cool. And then, they'll have pump heads that sort of just attach into your existing Schrader pump, like, into the Schrader section of your pump. So to allow for this. I guess my favorite part of this, though, is that you can actually still use a Presta pump head to inflate these. It won't be as good of an experience as their own click valve, but I think that overcomes the most obvious barrier to this, which is, if you force people to have a special pump to work with the valve, then it's never going to take off. But I think that is a pretty good way to go and a pretty good compromise. It looks good. It looks really easy to use.
I'd like to know if you can use the clicky head pump on a Presta valve. Has anyone tried it?
I don't know. I'm meant to be getting samples to test, so that's something I'm curious.
Give that a whirl.
I reckon not.
Well,
my guess is not.
Okay.
But I think. Anyway, I think this could be a pretty successful thing. I think time and time again, it's going to be up to other manufacturers to agree and to make this more successful. Because if it's a single brand trying to push for this, then it's never going to become an industry-wide standard. But I mean, it sounds like Schwalbe are keen to open it up to others, but I would imagine they're not doing that for free. So if there's a licensing fee associated with it, then I think that's probably going to be the barrier to stopping this from being a success.
The valve stem is sort of one of the last frontiers. Maybe could stand some innovation, sort of an unchanged. Yes. The only maybe rival is the Shimano SBD cleat that has seen no innovation since its inception and for decades, almost half a century. So, hey.
And Shimano, from what I can tell, Shimano keep trying to innovate. They just keep falling short on offering enough benefit to bother. Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. Okay. Well, I'd love to hear your feedback on this pump because it did tickle my fancy.
Yeah.
Let's say when I saw the.
So Schwalbe claiming 50% more airflow than a regular Presta valve. For things like tubeless, that has significant benefit. I'm not sure about tire sealant anti-clogging benefits. We'll see on that one. 50% more airflow, and then just nothing really to break. Like it really is a simplified valve system that clicks on, clicks off kind of thing. So no little thing to screw up, and no thing to break off or bend like so many people do with Presta valves at the moment. So all while not taking up more rim cavity space and seemingly not being as susceptible to dirt ingress as a straighter valve. So yeah, there you go. Time will tell. Trek have a new mountain bike, the Top Fuel Gen 4 for this one. So it's kind of like their lightweight trail bike, I guess, long travel cross-country bike, depends what you want to call it. I'd say probably the nearest competitor is probably the Specialized Epic Evo for this kind of bike. So it's a 130mm travel front, 120mm travel rear. Brad, have you managed to have a look at this thing?
Took a look at that thing.
Yeah.
Looks pretty good.
Anything stand out? I mean, it's a pretty modest update from the previous
I was going to say it looked a lot like the other one.
Yeah.
Has a lot of options for how you want to flip your little shock eyelet hardware to manipulate all types of stuff. And I was sort of humored almost by the Trek literature where they advertise it as this bike they're showing us, but mention that you could run a shorter or a longer I mean, they kind of are just like, put anything you want to. 27.5 rear wheel, sure, or 29, or 140 mil, or 120 mil if you want.
Choose your own adventure book.
You can flip this
bikes
around and it's more progressive. Sometimes I feel like there's too much going on in these bikes. It's a recurring theme of our podcast. I don't think I really know people who actively flip their flip chips around. I think a lot of people never touch them, and those who do.
A lot of people don't know they exist on their bikes they own.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that's a whole other thing, is all the features that exist on bikes people are not even aware of it. So that's another week's episode, or maybe a whole month series. Nevertheless, clean looking bike. It's not bad. I'm not a huge Trek person. So I kind of was not too blown away by this. It was very iterative of the previous one. Honestly, other than the paint, it's hard to really even spot differences. The linkage looks a little bit more kind of sculpted and hollowed out, and maybe scaled down some of the suspension, like the rocker link. And it has a bunch of bags and hatches and doors and windows and stuff where you can stuff your frame full of all types of goodies. So a lot of that's pretty standard fare. It's not really, nothing really blew me away as far as major innovations.
I mean, it's modest updates, but I guess so that it's a 4-position Mino link is what they're calling it, which is that adjustable switch link you're talking about. It's very Rocky Mountain-esque. Rocky Mountain did this for years and years, and I would say it was not a super well-used feature, and as far as I know, they've kind of moved away from it. But the idea is you can have either low or high geometry settings. And then on top of that, you can have you can adjust the rear suspension to either be more progressive or less progressive. So that's kind of how quickly it ramps up in its travel. They've also increased the anti-squat of the suspension for better acceleration. But all fairly modest updates. I think there is probably a larger conversation around whether adjustable flip chips are a band-aid for not knowing what geometry is best. But I think generally speaking, the stock position the bike comes in is the position most people will run it in. Probably the position that the brand thinks the geometry is best in. In that stock position, in that low position, they've slackened the head tube by a further half a degree. So I believe it's now 65.5 off the top of my head. They've very marginally increased the reach of the frame at the same time. They've moved to size-specific chainstay lengths, which is a nice feature, something a few other competing brands have been doing for a little while now. What else to tell you? They've dropped the frame weight by about 200 grams. My favorite feature is that they've removed a feature. They no longer have the knock block, which is the steering stopper in the headset. I used to take a file to the knock... Well, when I had Trek bikes, I would take a file to the knock block to increase the steering range of the bikes. Nice. So it's nice. They've just gotten rid of that feature altogether. So polarizing feature removed.
The small one comes with 27.5-inch wheels, the very smallest size they offered. So they make it must be a really tiny one. What else? Maybe all those many different suspension features or position options will play more of a useful role given the options to switch how much travel you want your bike to have and the length of stroke and all these things that they talk about is possible despite how it comes, which is in the low and least progressive setup, which I think for most people is how they want their bike to feel. You kind of don't really need that super progressive feeling unless you're really pushing the limits, riding super hard.
So you can run a 120 to a 140 mil fork on this. It comes with stock the 130.
Yeah.
It comes stock set up as 120 mil travel rear, but you can change out the rear shock, which not the cheapest thing to do, but you can change that out to make it 130 mil travel. So yeah, I mean, it is a very adjustable bike.
Yeah.
And it could be like, turn into either a burly cross country bike, depending on how you set it up, or a lightweight, longer travel trail bike. But I think it's worth noting that even the top end version, the most premium 9.9 XX build is going to be about 13 kilograms once you add pedals. So this isn't a whippet of a bike.
Jolanda Neff raced one of these, not this one, but the previous one last year at Lenzerheide at the World Cup in Switzerland there. She didn't have the best day, but I'm not saying that was related, but it was quite shocking.
And that's,
and
that's because Trek's other full suspension bike is pretty limited on travel, right? Like the Super Cal is 90 mil rear now.
I think they've upped it to 90 now, yeah. But it was like, it was like 75 to start with, and they bumped it up a little bit. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah, it's not very much. Yeah. So, but anyway, I think they got hers down to using some resources to make it as light as possible. It's probably still 24 to 25 pound bike.
For sure. Before we move on from this one, I think it's probably worth noting that one of the key features that Trek call out on this is that they've got a stronger and better sealed storage hatch in the down tube.
I did like that. I think I noticed that.
Yeah. So
it tells a story, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does tell a story, and I think it's it's definitely an example of first iterations of things are really the best iteration of them. But yeah, I mean, the previous Top Fuel storage hatch before, and I did find it narrow and annoying to get things in and out of, and found the cable sort of snagged a little bit on the bags you're trying to use. So they've completely redesigned the whole thing. The frame is now doesn't have a little window, like the storage hatch itself is bolting effectively directly into the frame. It's meant to be better weather sealed. They've updated the bags. They've improved the internal cable routing to not snag as much. So all needed things, but I think it's probably a good reminder that first iteration stuff is probably not going to be as dialed as you'd like it to. So buyer beware. Should we move on to another one?
We can move on to another one. I'm ready.
Brad, do you want to talk about Danger Home for a moment?
Sure.
Do you know Danger Home personally? You've probably met him.
I do. I have met him. And we
back
talked.
At your time in Scott SRAM, you probably would have crossed paths.
Yeah. He's like an ambassador for Scott, officially. And obviously they help supply the raw materials for him to craft into all the amazing and sometimes crazy things that he produces, which are a never-ending stream of fascinating ideas from that guy. So he's a super bright guy, super friendly, and just a wonderful man. His name is Gustav. Actually, he's I guess a bike mechanic by sort of trade, or was, and now he's kind of doing his Danger Home thing kind of full time, which is an awesome thing to get an opportunity. Yeah,
he had a heap of bikes at Eurobike, so it's cool to see how much attention he's getting. And I guess the one that's there were quite a few that are worth talking about, but the one I really want to talk about is what could be the lightest 29er.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, at least suspended 29er. He's made a hardtail that is 5.89 kilograms with the actual usable rotors. It goes lighter if he swaps to unusable silly rotors.
Yes.
And this was sitting at the Trick Stuff booth at Eurobike. It's obviously to showcase like the latest Trick Stuff disc brakes, which are incredibly powerful and incredibly light. But 5.89 kilograms with pedals. We're talking about a bike that has a Fox 32, like current, the new model 32 fork on the front. So that's a legitimate suspension fork.
That blew me away, the suspension fork element. That's I wonder if it's got everything like inside of it.
SRAM mechanical shifting, like 12-speed shifting. I think it was 12-speed, but like the derailleur is almost unrecognizable given he's changed every single part out on it for like hop components. The wheels, 1,869 grams for the pair with extra light hubs, carbon spokes, and port rims. Yeah,
Did you say 1,800? You said 800.
869 grams.
Yeah,
for the pair.
Yeah. Which is just bonkers. Yeah, for a mountain bike wheel.
Yeah, and like a bunch of Daramo stuff, including a custom one-piece saddle and seat post, which look kind of cool.
That's my favorite.
And apparently, it could be made lighter, but the one-piece idea was that you get more shell flex in the saddle because the center of the saddle wasn't supported by material. So
makes sense.
There's some really cool stuff on this. I think Danger Home still plans to do an official release for this bike, but what stood out to me most is that it actually, beyond the silly tires on it, it actually looks like it would be relatively rideable.
I hope so.
Do you agree with that? Like, it doesn't look like his bikes always come across as show bikes, but he does build them to ride them. And this one seemed that way, that like you could actually go out on a ride and not feel like you have to baby it other than those tires.
Yeah, I mean, for sure he's running some sort of nonsense tires, but they're still like gravelable, you know? That's a new term I'm coining, gravelable. I think it's going to be useful going forward, given the scope of our podcast lately. Anyway, beyond that, yeah, you're totally right. It's just kind of a testament to, if you really pay attention to every single thing, replace every single bolt, you know, go all the way through the bike and look for all the little things, that it does really add up. And I mean, that weight is absolutely stunning. The wheels are obviously half the weight of like a normal mountain bike wheel set almost, you know, that's crazy. But and it looks great too. That's what I love about a good Danger Home project, is they're all very professionally finished, and the quality of the execution is not just to like bolt some stuff together and have it, you know, be like a nude, raw, you know, blank looking kind of garage skunk works bike. It's like looks like a proper show bike, and everything is you know, chosen tastefully. So he had that, and they had sort of the opposite of that on display at Eurobike with the what was the Mad Max, like that gravel bike, that thing. That's another story. But I like to see he can go both ways. You know, that's pretty cool. He's got a lot of creative flair, but you can tell by how the execution is that he's very aware as a mechanic and very thoughtful and knowledgeable of like what is available just to begin with, to kind of inspire and help formulate the ideas that he ultimately has, and how things come together. You kind of have to know where you're going before you get there. And so I have a lot of respect for him in that sense as a mechanic, especially. You know, anybody with a big enough budget and access to catalog can order a bunch of fancy stuff, but there's a little more to it, I think, that makes his stuff stand out. So it's always cool to see somebody kind of from the bike mechanic space get a little extra attention for being above average, let's say, for Mr. Danger Home. So if you don't know that guy, or you haven't seen him, he's featured everywhere these days. He's on Pink Bike a lot, you know, so if you follow the news, you probably know him, but if not, look up Danger Holm, DangerHolm on Instagram, or Google it or whatever, and you'll see some totally wild, very cool concepts.
Yeah, well done, Gustav. Brad, can I get a little bit angry? It's on my mind. It comes off the back of Colin Williams' Watch and Go on Instagram. Put out a bit of a statement, I guess, just calling on brands just to do better, because his job as a service tech in a bike shop seems to be being occupied by just wasting time on warranty repairs lately. That can be avoided, and it's a lot of it is just bad quality control from manufacturers. And he's kind of just getting fair and fully fair, but he's just getting sick of brands not supporting their shit. As in, like, you know, his days are getting wasted and he's not really getting reimbursed for his time associated with these products that shouldn't be in the market. They should have been picked up at the factory as problematic and not shipped out to bike shops and make it someone else's problem. So, and these aren't cheap products. These are premium brands. These are, you know, top end brands. And I'm not going to mention the brands because it seems, you know, following that, I shared it on my own Instagram, and then I got 50 plus DMs from shop mechanics all complaining about the brand they have. And basically every single brand got mentioned as far as being problematic in this regard. So I'm going to narrow it down this week. This is a much broader issue, and I'd like to do an episode probably titled Fix Your Shit. But for now, I just want to complain about flat mount brakes, because it says it's in the name. It's a flat mount. But Brad, how many of them are actually flat?
So far, none, but I still have hope. This is like the universally held, I think, among probably all mechanics, most that I've talked to would probably put it at number one of the most sort of nonsensical innovation. I mean, it makes sense like fundamentally, but the old style of like a simple post mount kind of worked just fine. Obviously, this is a little bit more compact, and there's some, I don't know, sort of standards that are maybe made possible by all sort of sharing this, all frame manufacturers sharing this design and so forth. But yeah, I mean, like you say, they're never flat. Sometimes they're painted over. Sometimes the surface just isn't square. Sometimes one relative to the other is out of plane. And as soon as you kind of get things lined up and then tighten the bolt down fully, basically pull, it becomes flush with the surface when the surface isn't flat or not in plane with what needs to be. And there's no cup and cone, washer anymore to sort of take up the intolerances of manufacturing that used to be quite simple to adjust around. It's so you have these scenarios where either you're facing your own surfaces, or I've seen it. Gosh, I mean, I've seen the same fork across probably a dozen bikes, the same make and model of bike. All of them are wrong, so it's like something at the factory is wrong fundamentally, where you're just not gonna ever get one that's actually correct. And there's really nothing you can do until you start taking material away. And that takes time. It takes very expensive tools that not every shop even has.
Yes.
Or you make some shim.
There are disc tab facing tools that are designed to fix this issue. And shops increasingly are having to invest, $1,000 plus in these tools because of these frames that are coming to them that, the only way to get the brake not to rub is to face them, which takes time and obviously takes an expensive tool, and there's risk in it. But then there's also a number of frames coming into shops that even after they try to face them, they still don't work, or no amount of facing can fix the frame because they're that far out. I guess my point and where I get angry is frame preparation used to be considered the role of a bike shop. It used to be expected that a steel frame builder would build a frame. This is 20, 30 years ago, would build a frame, and then it would be up to the bike shop to ream and face the head tube and bottom bracket and, then assemble the bike. That was part of the assembly. But we're in a day and age now where there isn't just two bottom bracket standards and one headset, one head tube size. There's infinite numbers of
everyone
variations.
Has their own.
And the tools in order to fix these are flawed in design, I guess. Like, to face an IS headset head tube, it's an imperfect solution to fix these and to ensure parallelism. And the tools are hugely expensive and specific to every imaginable size and angle you can imagine. So we're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars of tools required in order to prep these frames for a problem that shouldn't be a bike shop's problem. It should be part of the manufacturing of a frame to make these things symmetrical and to make the frame right. And that's where I'm angry, is that it seems like every brand has just decided it's fine to ship out to make flat mount frames, flat mount disc brake bikes, and close enough is good enough, and then charge an absolute premium for these things. And if close enough doesn't end up being good enough, then hey, let the shop, find a shop that can face it. That's bullshit.
Yeah, I agree. I work in a shop when I'm not talking to you on this podcast, and I deal with this all the time. And it's crazy. And it's crazy because, I mean, flat mount's not new. It's been out for like 5 years or something as an industry standard.
More.
More. Yeah. And so for sure, every one of these brands is getting feedback that these things aren't straight and there's nothing happening, it seems like. I also wonder, like, how do we know that, like, the bore on these calipers is perfectly straight, to, like, for the, like, maybe that's where some of the problem is too sometimes. And I've definitely had situations where the caliper, the adapter itself is wrong, and then you don't it's hard to isolate the variable too. You don't really know, and you kind of don't trust anything at this point to be straight, so you kind of assume the frames are wrong. And then if it's not that and it's actually the brake, then it's just like compounding frustrations and time lost and money theoretically also lost. And to your point, it should be done by the factory, but also, don't you think it's kind of ridiculous that the old frames, where it was common to be done in the shop, like facing the BB and like chasing the threads, shouldn't that also have been done by the manufacturer of the frame? I mean,
yes.
If you go to all this trouble to make this fancy frame, handmade guy with your TIG welded and all this stuff, like, okay, good job, beautiful frame, lovely,
and to be fair, I think
and lugs, finish it now. You know,
all the good handmade builders that I typically cover, like at handmade shows, they Made Australia and Spoken, like almost all of them do spend a lot of time getting these things perfect.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Like they really do emphasize like that their stuff is dialed in terms of symmetry and alignment and all that. Yeah, I mean, and there's time and design in that. But yeah, I mean, we're talking about more mass production product here. Yeah. All the big brands, all the little brands charging an absolute premium for a carbon frame of stock sizing. I mean, the worst horror stories are related to the brands that you associate as being the most premium. I'm just going to go ahead and name them, like Colnago and Open.
I was going to say Colnago was the one that came to mind first from my earlier days in the shop. Yeah.
Like these are very, very expensive brands that have the margin to get this stuff right.
And it's like their legacy.
Consistently, I'm hearing stories that they are not right. That they are,
this was not planned. I was going to say Colnago after you got done talking. Seriously.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's very, very few brands that I haven't heard of issues with. I'd say someone like Santa Cruz seems to do pretty well most of the time. I don't hear a lot of bad things about them. But yeah, basically everyone else seems to have these issues, and some are fixable, some are not. But my point is none of it should have to be fixable. All of it should be done at the factory correctly. And this shouldn't be a conversation a customer has to have with their shop or a shop has to have with their supplier. It just should be right. And yeah, Flatmount has enough issues already in design before you add in manufacturing issues and tolerance issues. So just please, bike industry, get this right, because it's not okay to like put this burden on retailers who are already struggling and make it their problem. So one more thing is I'm gonna call on bike shop mechanics to stop taking this. So like it seems like everyone's just given up and just accepts this, and like they've all had the fight with their suppliers and they've all asked to be reimbursed for their time facing frames, or the time taken to swap out a frame. And it sounds like very few retailers and very few retailers get reimbursed by brands for going through these efforts. Stop accepting that. Let's put some pressure on the brands. Start forcing them to accept the blame on this and to pay for your time, and then all of a sudden we'll see these issues fixed.
I'm going to take that to heart, Dave, and you'll be happy to know this actually hits close to home for you too. I got reimbursed for some labor in the shop. It's a funny story. I want to say, was it Cannondale or Specialized now? Gosh, the details are fading away. This was like 3 weeks ago, so I should be able to recall. But maybe I was so blindsided by or dumbfounded, maybe was a better word. I received a bike, which in the United States, it's very uncommon for people to use the right brake lever to operate the front brake. I know that for you is probably something you do in real life, which is insane. Difference of hemisphere. So in any case, here in the US of A, we like the right one to do the back. And I received this bike assembled, and it was opposite here in the US of A, right out of the box. And I was like, did they get this thing shipped over here from,
that was a mistake on the assembly line. Yeah.
But I think it was just a mistake from the assembly line, because like surely they don't like distribute any of the same bikes to Australia. I mean, do bikes in Australia even come set up that way? I meant to ask you this. Actually.
So the big brands will actually come. Most of them, not always, but most of them will actually come set up, configured the right way around. So yeah, it is the right way around for this region. Sorry. So I think it's an assembly line, or it's a logistics issue that you got
something weird happened there. But anyway, it did require, they're hydraulic, so it did require some effort to correct it, and we billed them for it, and they reimbursed us for it. So hey,
okay, good.
Proof that it can happen.
It can happen, and some brands are really good with it. Yeah. But I keep hearing from other retailers that the brand they do doesn't reimburse them for the labor of X for warranty repair or whatever it is. And my point is, if it's a quality control error with your manufacturer, you need to stand behind your product and make that right.
Yeah.
And it really, really shouldn't be up to the retailer to do that. It's not their problem. So yeah, there you go. I think we can move on.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's what I wanted to get off my chest, and that has what's been on my mind for this week and the last 5 years.
Okay.
So yeah. All right, we've got a few other little quick tech bites to get through. So I guess let's get through them. Brad, this one might have twigged an eyebrow raise from yourself in interest. Feedback Sports have an electric work stand.
Yeah, everything's electric these days, Dave.
It is. Everything has a plug now. So,
but I guess when the bikes are electric, you need this stand to get them off the ground.
Yep.
So
yeah, e-bikes are heavy.
They are.
But yeah, so Pro E-Lift is the stand. It's $1,200.
Oh.
Feedback Sports are claiming it's the first sort of like consumer friendly electric work stand. I would argue that Remco actually have a stand that's a little less than this. Perhaps not as portable, but yeah, I'd say Remco is probably the first consumer work stand. But this thing looks pretty good. It's got pretty generous minimum maximum heights of about 837 millimeters. Not about, that's exactly it. Minimum height, and 1.93 meters maximum height, which is quite a bit actually. I mean, the range seems to be higher than Remco's stand. I should mention that the Remco stand I've been testing, should have a review of soon. But yeah, this Feedback Sports stand can have lift up to 50 kilogram bikes and has little wheels on the back of it in case you need to move the stand around. So it looks good. I'm quite keen to try one of these at some point. So Feedback Sports, if you're listening, yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's portability, or it's like sort of intention to be. I guarantee this thing's going to be heavy, but
oh yeah, it's like 35 kilograms.
Yeah, but it can lift more than its own weight. So good job.
It can.
Yeah. So, but that element of it to me is kind of interesting. That it's like a portable e-bike power assist.
Yeah,
thing.
A movable work stand.
Movable.
Yeah,
movable. Yeah. Looks good. Feedback makes like the best portable work stands in my opinion. Anyway, so I'm quite sure that every other aspect of this that's just related to its work standness is going to be great. And I'm very keen to hear, Dave, when you receive yours and do your test, which I'm sure you will soon after your little message you just released now.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
We'll see. I sure could use one though. I mean, it's a pain lifting up all these e-bikes, I tell you. So
and I guess what I've learned through using this Remco stand, and I had used other more dedicated workshop electric stands before that, but yeah, namely with this Remco stand, it's not just about lifting up heavy e-bikes that I use it for. I've actually found myself adjusting the height of the stand far more frequently than I ever would with other work stands, just because of how easy it is to do with the bike still in there. So, if I'm bleeding a brake, and I'm a shorty, so if I'm bleeding a brake and I want to get the bike at the right sort of angle and still see what the bleed cup is doing, or still be able to comfortably reach the syringe at the lever, then I can I can basically lower the bike, and it's all very quick and easy with an electric stand. So it's kind of changed how my workflow is.
What about this idea? What if you get a regular old work stand and you get a little platform that raises up and down, and you can just stand on that, and then the bike you don't need an electric
move the
work
mechanic,
stand,
not the bike.
Exactly.
Like a step stool.
Kind of like a step elevator.
But make it electric.
Yeah.
Make it electric.
Yeah.
Just I like where you're going with this.
We have a lot of ideas on this show. I would like to try it. And I was going to say too, to your point, I used to use in the specialized service course for the S Racing, we had the EVT stands. Have you used the EVT stands? Yes. They're so wonderful.
I love them.
Yeah, me too. I was going to say, I mean, the price is actually, I think, still cheaper than that stand, which is, it is counterweighted. It has like an amazing like weighted pulley system where there's a weight inside the sort of main posts of the shaft. So it's not electric powered, but you do get plenty of assist lifting things off the ground just by the interesting and unique design of this stand. And like you said, I was using that up and down, like moving the bike high and low all the time when I had that stand, because it is useful to be able to do that, but it's awfully clunky on almost every other type of shop work stand, especially. It's not like a telescoping design with the quick release like some portable travel stands are. So yeah, it's
which
for workshop
also
use.
Are very fiddly.
Yeah, and it's like so lightweight
mounted, they don't work very well.
No. Yeah, it's kind of like cocked under the weight of the bike and doesn't really slide correctly. So anyway, this should be cool. I was telling the guys at the shop we should think about getting these EVT stands or a power assisted one.
For sure.
For at least one, because there are definitely some bikes where it would certainly justifiable
it's
would
a
make our lives
issue.
a lot easier. Yeah, and it's a safe. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True that. Yeah. So
it's an occupational health and safety issue now. So
yeah, we're
some of
the
e-bikes and cargo bikes. So
from catching on fire to falling over in the work stand on my foot, the risks are limitless.
Yes.
So anyway, what else?
Yeah. Also on the list, DT Swiss are celebrating 30 years of business. It's their 30-year anniversary. To celebrate, they have silver hubs, silver spokes.
Throwback.
I think these hubs look awesome. So yeah, they've got the EXC 1200 Classic which is their cross-country mountain bike race wheel. And they've got the 1100 die-cut DB383 DEC, which is their lightest weight road wheel. Both of these you can now get in an anniversary series with silver spokes, silver hubs, and special decals. But most importantly, you can also buy the new 240 DEG, which is their 90-tooth 240 hub with their new ratchet system. You can get that in a limited edition silver, and I think that is a very cool looking hub.
I wish that they would write Hugie on it just for old time's sake.
Because I feel like you used to get silver Hugie hubs.
Yeah, or do you remember the red one? It was like powder coated red, not Anna, like yellow. Mm-hmm. Oh man,
they recently had when they released the DEG hub, they also offered some limited edition red ones.
Oh, cool! Yeah, those are awesome.
Yeah, little nod to that. So
heck yeah,
they're around.
Yeah.
But,
if you know, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like silver things.
Yeah, I know you've been saying that. You're excited for the shift back to silver.
Yes,
and it's coming.
And SRAM are definitely
they're
helping push it along with the latest red stuff. So
yes,
yeah. Manitou, they've updated some cross country. Yeah, Manitou's still around, still kicking, still fighting the good fight.
Yeah,
a classic brand under the Hayes banner these days. But yeah, they've updated their suspension fork. It's been a long time coming. It's been being used as a prototype for ages under Rock Rider Ford riders such as Sevilla Bunk. But yeah, it's the R8 is now official, which is a 34mm stanchioned lightweight cross-country fork. $1,000, 1,450 grams claimed. And the feature that stands out to me is that you can adjust the travel between 80 to 120 mil travel in 10 mil increments with internal spacers, and they give you the spacers. So I think that's a nice change compared to like RockShox, which require you to buy a new air spring assembly.
Yeah, totally rebuild the fork to change that out and have all these parts lying around. Yeah, we had a whole service course full of air springs, and that seems like a much more straightforward way of going about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've had a lot of racing success.
Way of doing it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's just simple. I would expect it's just like a simple kind of clip-on type spacer in there. Cool.
Like the original Fox forks.
Right. And they've been winning a lot of races and having a lot of top finishes in the World Cup racing that has been going on this year. Sevilla have been a big factor there. So must not be bad. I haven't actually ridden one myself. I haven't ridden a Manitou fork in probably 20 years or so, maybe more. I have a couple in my basement on my old bikes that I like to keep. Yeah. But quite curious about it, and guess we'll see. I mean, will we see? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned those old bikes, and that's probably what I'm liking most about this new fork is the graphics and the aesthetics are kind of
very referential to like
the original days.
Yeah. The Manitou 4 looks like kind of those 3 or 4 generation forks, and but it's like a reverse arch too on this fork, and so it's definitely not like a copy or doesn't look anything. I mean, it looks like a pretty interesting product. It's aesthetically interesting, and hey, we'll see.
And it has a silver polished arch, so more silver.
Yeah. True. I know, Dave. I mean, everything is lining up for you in 2024.
Oh, it's looking good. It's looking good.
How about a rear shock? They have a rear shock.
These products.
I mean, they make one.
They do have a new rear shock.
It's on the bike.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like rear shocks, for most people, are just going to stick with what comes with the bike. So
yeah, it's true.
For me, the fork's kind of the more interesting talking point. But yeah, they do have a matching rear shock, which looks nice as well. Shimano, they've updated their RC703 and RC703W, which is the women's version shoes. So these are the S-Fire shoes, the second tier version. So it's a $250 shoe. But yeah, I guess they've kind of brought them closer to their top end racing road shoe, which is a really nice shoe that I like. So yeah, some key differences are, the RC7 uses a synthetic leather rather than a microfiber leather of the RC9, and got slightly more basic boas, slightly less stiff sole. So these are sort of the reasons why it's a cheaper shoe. But yeah, overall, I guess Shimano's saying that for people that perhaps want a slightly more relaxed fit versus the RC9 shoe, then they should probably consider the RC7. Haven't used it myself. I have used previous versions of these, and I'd agree the slightly cheaper version tends to be a bit more relaxed around the heel and be a bit more relaxed around the upper as well, and not sort of have a glove-like fit, but more relaxed. So yeah, worth a look if you're after a shoe that doesn't cost the equivalent of a low-end bicycle.
But would you rather have this shoe or the Canyon shoe, which costs more?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean it's hard to say without having put my feet into one of those Canyon slippers. So
I'm going Shimano all day. I'm saying it. Shimano all day. But I will also say this, Dave. I will also say this. When it comes to things like shoes, there's a few things like this that I always throw down for the best version of the thing. It's worth it. Totally worth it. Almost every time. I can't really think of a good example where it wouldn't have been worth it.
Yeah. I agree. Like, especially a Shimano shoe that tends to last a few seasons of use. Like,
Shimano shoes are awesome. Generally, in my experience.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've done enough back-to-back testing between the top end and the mid-range version or the second tier version, and yes, there's a significant price difference between them, but there's also a very obvious difference in fit and feel.
And like me, quality of finish too. It seems like
Yep. For me, time and time again, I would personally spend the extra and get the top end shoe, because turns out every single pedal stroke you make, you're going to be aware of it.
Yeah. And also YOLO. So just come on. But that being said, I'm sure this shoe is also nice. Shimano shoes, like I said, my experience with them has been extremely positive.
And not everyone can afford $400.
It is a crazy price. I know. I kind of checked out of like what things cost for a little while there in the last several years, and have recently become more aware of it now that I'm back spending more time in the shop and thinking about prices and stuff. It's stunning what things cost. Let's just put it that way. Yep. So I can understand why you wouldn't, but I would also just save it for save your pennies up, because I would say it's always worth it to get the best shoe you can get. And I would say best shoes, like best chain, spend the money on your chains, cassettes, like spend the money there. Those are kind of places where I like to not cut corners, because it actually does have a legitimate
cassettes. I like to go second best,
one step down. I know you do.
Yeah. Chains, just run it. Just go the best.
Take me to the limit.
Often in the case of SRAM and Shimano and Campagnolo, I think the most expensive chain is often the strongest chain they make, because the hollow pin adds an extra riveting step, which makes the pin connection stronger.
No one ever believes me when I tell them
this. Best corrosion resistance, lowest friction, and in most cases, the highest durability. There are some exceptions, but it's never vastly worse durability by going the best. No. It's normally as good, if not better. So treat yourself to a better chain. It's worth it. And especially with Shimano 12-speed, because the SLX and XT chains rust. They get surface rust.
I know.
Because
dude, oh my God, we had a customer who tried to warranty an Ultegra chain, 12-speed Ultegra chain, because it had a little flash surface rust on it.
Yeah.
I was like, bro, we're not going to just buy you a chain, because that's what we're going to have to do. They're not going to warranty this. Yeah. And so it's on us to just give you one or not. So I'm going not. And we didn't. And after some time, the situation resolved, but it was not. It was, and I kind of understand too, because it is like a relatively high-end product, and it's a rusty chain. It's kind of like a cheap, janky bike thing that shouldn't be on your DI2 bike,
for sure.
And so I agree, but it's also like, come on, bro, you got to like lube your chain once in a while too. So
those SLX and XT chains, 12-speed, do rust more easily than previous generation.
I agree. And the plating is different on them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
get yourself a Dura/XTR chain if you've got a 12-speed Shimano bike.
Yeah. And live life to the fullest. Yes.
Yes. All right. That feels like a good place to wrap up.
Yeah, we really kind of got into the geeky side of things there right at the end. We were kind of reading some PSAs there for a minute about these products and whatnot, but I feel like we really got back in touch with our roots on that last one there with the chain thing.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
So,
yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. We're reading less PSAs, more PDFs.
I don't know if that makes sense, but cool. I liked when you read out the product name of the DT Swiss wheel. It sounded like you were reading off its serial number. Did you read that again? Can you go back and find that? It was like 1300 beep bop boop FQS974X.
I mean, we did a special episode with DT Swiss where I had them explain their wheel naming, and it was still a lot.
It's the most Swiss way of naming anything. It's just too much. I don't know. Referential numbers and letters that just make it a name, man.
Yeah, I mean, the 1100 die cut DB38 3 DEC road wheel.
That's a serial number. I'm telling you, there's no chance that's a product name. You're just getting your info.
No, that's the product name. Yeah.
All right. We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it makes perfect sense once you work for DT Swiss and understand it all.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. We can go through it quickly. I mean, the 1100 symbolizes their top end wheel because it's the lowest number. The die cut, no, this is going to end up in a corrections corner. People are going to
one is a lower number.
Yeah, the die cut I think references the hub shape, the type of spoke interface.
Yeah. I believe that is true. Yes.
The DB would be disc brake. The 38 would be the rim height, the rim depth, and the 3 DEC would be 3 decades. It's a celebration.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's the one where I really didn't understand it, but now that you say it like that, you're right. Yeah, 3 deck.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Clear as mud. All right. Brad, always great to see you.
Dave, it was a pleasure.
All right.
I can hardly wait until next Wednesday.
Perfect. All right. It's a date. And that concludes this week's episode of Geek Warning. If you liked this episode, please tell your friends. Let them know that there's a podcast for fellow bike geeks out there that hopefully will inform them on the latest and greatest and other things to complain about. If you haven't already, head to escapecollective.com. We've got more content than you could possibly read in any given day, but you can consume it all for just $1 this month. So escapecollective.com/TDF to take us up on that offer and to help support our little organic independent media outlet that has no advertising, has a very clean interface for a website, no pop-ups except for us asking you to join. It's I'm going to say please support it because we try not to offer an annoying website experience and try to give you good content that you can actually read. There you go. That's the pitch. Support what we do. Thank you. Brad?
Thanks, Dave. See you next week.
Cheers.